Hello, dear friends. This story has caught my attention because it reveals the hidden side of the powerful. I try to be as objective as possible because the Civil War was a great trauma for Spaniards, which unfortunately still remains. Opinion piece. Secrets of Franco. He was a supporter of the Sinarchy, a paternalistic and elitist system. His mother was a spiritualist medium. He was very fond of esotericism. He belonged to a secret society. The Moors said he had baraka, a Rifian which foretold his future. A Jew gave him a protective talisman. He was a philo-Sephardite and also an anti-Semite. He ordered to look for the sweat of St. Paul. Zahoris located the belly of the fallen. Believed in fighting after death. The Civil War, a trauma for Spain. He had an Hindu alchemist in Salamanca. He came from Nazi Germany to make gold. He was working in the palace of Anaya. The Hindu alchemist's name was Savarpoldi Hammaralt. He worked in the laboratory of the Faculty of Sciences of Salamanca. Military commanders became impatient when he failed to make gold. One day he disappeared from Salamanca without being seen and was never heard from again. He was wanted in Germany on suspicion of being a British spy. All the prominent people of the world hide their esoteric aces up their sleeves. Let's start. Every time I have looked at the portrait of General Franco, I have always sensed that he was hiding many secrets, just like when I look at the bust of a pharaoh. Behind this tale, pompous and official Catholicism of his regime, aimed at the mental control of the population, Franco hid an esoteric, magical, and witchcraft side, very typical of a Galician, which in other times would have caused him problems with the Inquisition. Throughout his life, the general gave notable signs of a certain taste for the esoteric and a strong attachment to religious relics, as evidenced by the reliquary of the hand of Santa Teresa of Jesus, or the mantle of the Virgin of Pilar, which he used during his months of illness as a balm for his ailments. All the prominent personalities of the world hide their esoteric aces up their sleeves. It is known today that many important politicians or directors of banks or large companies and millionaires of all kinds have their own series of personal sorcerers who advise them or do little jobs for them. It is known that high-level clairvoyants charge very expensive fees and earn their fame for their successes, especially financial and political ones. They say they are inspired by angels, but I suspect that they are referring to fallen angels. It is the occult and esoteric side of power that is never talked about. The people never find out half of what goes on behind the scenes of power, unless some investigator discovers it, but the time has come to reveal all the secrets and mysteries. The Valley of the Fallen. The clearest example that links Franco with esotericism is the Valley of the Fallen, el Valle de los Caídos. where there is a great esoteric symbolism. To choose the site, he didn't hesitate to incorporate dowsers and an astrologer to the commission of experts who had to find the ideal enclave for the creation of this monument. The valley is located in an area of power aligned with the Escorial monastery. According to tradition, the Escorial monastery was built to cover the mouth of hell, while the belly of the fallen would be in a twin zone of positive energy. The staircase that leads to the enclosure is made up of 10 steps that may remind us of the 10 levels that Jewish Kabbalah lists for acquiring wisdom. According to an urban legend, the greatest sculpture that represents the Archangel Azrael emits some nights a mysterious feminine song. The Phalangist believes so much in life after death that there are posters of the ghost of a Phalangist falling in combat, standing guard and fighting for his ideals in the astral world of the spirits. The problem is that in the other neighborhood no one can be killed because they are already dead, and I say this with respect for all beliefs. The professional who has revealed more esoteric secrets about Franco is Álvaro Anula Pulido, a young journalist and writer born in Vicálvaro, Madrid in 1997. Graduated in journalism from the University Rey Juan Carlos, who, since he was a child, has always investigated and debunked the mysteries and legends of Salamanca. This is a summary, in my own words, of the information revealed by my journalist colleague, respecting the copyright. The character. Francisco Franco Bahamonde was a Spanish military man, member of the group of high-ranking military leaders who staged the 1936 coup d'etat against the government of the Second Republic after many public disorders, giving rise to the Spanish Civil War. He was invested as supreme leader of the rebel side on October 1st, 1936, and served as leader of Spain from the end of the conflict until his death in 1975, when I was a student in the university, and as a president of the government between 1938 and 1973. During his mandate at the head of the army and head of the state, especially during the Civil War and the first years of the regime, there was a strong repression, particularly against the supporters of the Republican side that was defeated in the conflict, to which was added the exile of hundreds of thousands of Spaniards abroad. Hundreds of thousands of Spaniards perished in concentration camps, summary military trials without judicial guarantees, extrajudicial executions, or in prison. The most unjust were those sentenced for their political ideology without having blood crimes. In addition, the Catholic religion became an imposed obligation because there was no freedom of belief. During the last years of the dictatorship was transformed into a soft dictatorship, which is what I lived through, but the progressives of the time had to buy some banned books on the sly, especially from Mexico and Argentina. I don't harbor resentment for a civil war between Spanish brothers, even though they shot a Phalangist uncle of mine, but there were supporters of both sides, even within each family. The Civil War is a trauma that all of us Spaniards have engraved in our collective unconscious. Now, I only wish the best for Spain and the Spaniards, and also for all the countries of the world. I wish that we never ever kill each other. The sweat of St. Paul. The sweat of St. Paul obsessed Franco. The knife with which St. Paul was beheaded is hot, said a headline in the newspaper El Alcázar. Franco altered on several occasions the search for the sweat with which Nero had supposedly beheaded the apostle St. Paul, and which had been one of the most revered relics of the city of Toledo until its disappearance at the beginning of the Civil War. The head of state himself, Francisco Franco, had given the order to begin the search, for which it was necessary for the primate Archbishop of Toledo, Enrique Pla y Daniel, to lift the closure of the convent. Testimony of one of the nuns pointed out that the sweat, also known as the sweat of St. Paul, had been thrown into a well by Juan Mora, the monastery de Mandero, to prevent it from falling into the hands of the Republican militias who, on July 25, 1936, assaulted the building. In 1950, the year of the Apostle Paul of Tarsus was celebrated, so Franco wanted to present Pope Pius XII with a gift of the weapon with which, according to tradition, Emperor Nero had beheaded the apostle. The search failed. The search had to be suspended without the desired results, although the interest of the caudillo made it last for several days, during which the firemen drained the water and removed the debris from the 3 existing wells in the enclosure. Magical protection. The Moors said Franco had divine grace or baraka, a special luck against pallets, according to his sister Pilar Franco. When he was shot by one of the Rifian snipers, the young commander moved as the young commander, I don't know if it's the translation, moved as he was bitten by a mosquito, and the bullet didn't kill him. The Berbers had an atavistic fear from Franco because they believed he had a supernatural protection. Luck was always on Franco's side, especially during the Civil War, since the generals who could have taken his place, such as Mola or Sanjurjo, died suddenly. I'm not going to enter into political or historical polemics, but only to reveal secrets of his life. It is now known that General Franco was no stranger to the occult sciences, which aroused so much curiosity. His mother was a medium and held senses, and when he was stationed in Africa, it is said that his decisions in military campaigns were advised by a mysterious seer called Mercida, who told him his future and his mission. This seeress was consulted by both Spanish and French soldiers, which leads us to believe that she was more of a spy than a witch. Secret society. Apparently, Franco was linked to a secret society in France in favor of the Sinarchy called La Cagoule, whose banner was a black flag, which was dismantled by the French police after the Allied victory. As its head was Marshal Philippe Pétain, a Nazi German sympathizer, and in command was young Coutrut, a member of the same Sinarchist group as Franco. Sinarchy is the paternalistic and elitist political system in which power is exercised by an elite or corporation. It can be understood as the decisive influence of a group of commercial companies or powerful individuals in the political and economic affairs of a country. In short, it is a paternalism like the enlightened despotism or illustrated despotism of all for the people but without the people. A mysterious nun. It was also influenced by Ramona Gimargas Soler, a strange Catalan nun born at the end of the 19th century in Vic, who from a very young age witnessed supernatural apparitions that gave her messages from the beyond to bring them to the hereafter. It is said that she was relocated to help in the general's decision-making during the war, and that she had the gift of ubiquity because she was seen in two places at the same time. In the palace of El Pardo, she was also received visits. Franco received visits from the strange Catalan nun with whom she talked for hours to give him advice. And on one occasion, she even physically disappeared when Franco's guard offered to take her by car to her convent. It is talked about a mysterious Sephardic Kabbalist Jew named Corintio Hatha, who warned him that he was the chosen one to lead the national uprising, and who elaborated a very powerful Kabbalistic talisman for him as a protective shield to face the civil war. This Jew is credited with having added to Franco's symbol of victory astrological and alchemical symbols that sought to magically protect the general. Franco and the Jews. The policy towards the Jews during Franco's regime was determined by the attitude of the head of state towards the Jews, which moved between philo-Sephardism and anti-Semitism with roots in Christian and anti-Judaism. It was also conditioned by the international situation at the time. Thus, it went from the anti-Semitism of the early post-war years, coinciding with Hitler's victories in the Second World War, to awakening of the anti-Semitic discourse after the victory of the Allies, and especially when from 1950 onwards Francoism was recognized by the Western powers due to the Cold War. General Franco was a philo-Sephardite since his years in Moroccan War, as evidenced by the article Shawem the Sad, published in the magazine of the colonial troops in 1926, when he was 33 years old and had just been promoted to brigadier general. In the article, he highlighted the virtues of the Sephardic Jews with whom he had dealt and with whom he became friends. For Franco, the superiority of the Spanish nation was manifested in its capacity to purify even the Jews, turning them into Sephardim, quite different from their other co-religionists, says Álvarez Chillida. Attempts have been made to explain Franco's philo-Sephardism by his supposed Jewish conversion origins, which some have even related to his devotion to Santa Teresa de Jesus of a convert family, but there is no proof of this. In any case, General Franco's philo-Sephardism didn't affect his policy of keeping Spain free of use except in its African territories. However, the most anti-Semitic manifestations of General Franco date from two articles that in 1949 and 1950 he wrote for the newspaper Arriba, signed with the pseudonym of Joachim Bohr, in which he links the Jews with Freemasonry and describes them as the Seattle fanatics, in quotes, an army of speculators accustomed to breaking or executing the law. In 1949, at a time when the regime was suffering from international isolation, Franco's propaganda invented the myth of Franco, savior of the Jews, especially the Sephardim. This made it possible to accuse the newly created state of Israel of ingratitude, since it had just rejected the establishment of diplomatic relations with Spain and had voted in the United Nations against the lifting of sanctions against the regime. Salamanca. This is the most interesting part. Franco had an Hindu alchemist to make gold in the Anaya palace in Salamanca during the Spanish Civil War, according to the book Salamanca Misteriosa by my journalist colleague Álvaro Anula Pulido, which can be purchased on Amazon. The best studies in the world of alchemy were those made in Nazi Germany, since it was then very fashionable to study the occult sciences. Excuse me. The Spanish Civil War between 36 and 39 had an uneven development in the provinces of the current autonomous community of Castilla y León. In the province of Salamanca, which had two regiments, the rebels declared a state of war on July 1936 and took control of the city and the province in a few days, with not much difficulty, except for resistance in Béjar and Ciudad Rodrigo. After that, some columns of military and phalangist volunteers were formed to join the forces that intended to take the capital of Spain from Valladolid. A strange alchemist. The Hindu alchemist was called Savarpoldi Hammaralt, and he came from Nazi Germany. He arrived in Salamanca after the recommendation of Nicolás Franco, brother of the general, who was a great fan of the search of the mythical philosopher's stone. The strange Indian character had two meetings with Franco's brother and promised him that he would be able to combat all the gold they needed to win the Civil War. He said that he had the formula for making gold, but that it could only be used if the gold made is combated for a cause, and that cause was the destruction of materialistic communism, in his words, in quotes. The supposed Hindu alchemist was secretly installed in the palace of Anaya, where he had for himself the laboratory of the Faculty of Sciences of Salamanca. The attempts to transmute the metal into gold were supervised by Nicolás Franco in order to obtain all the gold necessary to win the war. But the military commanders became impatient when the supposed alchemist spent months without succeeding in making gold, until they learned that Savarpoldi Hammaralt had indeed studied chemistry in Germany, but that he was wanted on suspicion of being a British spy. When they went to look for him at the palace of Anaya to arrest him, he was no longer there and had mysteriously disappeared, and was never heard from again. The very astute man had put his feet in the sand when he saw them coming. Short news or breaking news. The bishops accused the government of encouraging the two Spains of dramatic memory. The bishops warned that legislative initiatives of the coalition government, such as the educational reform, the law of euthanasia and the law of democratic memory, or the reform of abortion, are encouraging an artificial resurgence of the two Spains of such dramatic memory. In quotes. Biden chooses his advisor Yulisa Reynoso as ambassador to Spain. The president proposed on Tuesday her advisor, Julissa Reynoso Pantaleon, of Dominican origin, chief of staff of the First Lady, as the new U.S. ambassador to Spain and Andorra. Iberoamerica to grow by 5.8% in 2021. The International Monetary Fund on Tuesday raised its growth forecast for Iberoamerica and the Caribbean in 2021 to 5.8%, a significant improvement over its April estimate, thanks mainly to positive data from Brazil and Mexico. Digital yuan threatens the dollar. Nearly 80 countries, including China and the US, are in the process of developing a digital currency. However, Beijing is leading the way in financial innovation, and this could threaten the dollar's status as the reserve currency. China supports the Taliban. The Taliban are gaining diplomatic and military ground following the withdrawal of NATO forces from Afghanistan. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi received a high-level Taliban delegation on Wednesday. Beijing hopes to strengthen ties with the Taliban and give them international legitimacy. Russia acts on Afghanistan threat. Russia reports that it is taking action in the face of a dramatic increase in violent activity in Afghanistan. The country announced a series of coordinated military exercises with several neighboring countries. A set of joint maneuvers with China will also take place in August. The Russian defense minister noted that the withdrawal of Western troops has led to a dramatic worsening of the situation in Afghanistan. The end of the combat mission in Iraq leaves a vacuum. Following the US announcement of the withdrawal of its combat troops at the end of the year from Iraq, some sectors of the country fear that their departure will leave a vacuum that will be exploited both by the jihadist group Islamic State and the Shiite militias that the Baghdad authorities are unable to control. Blinken meets Dalai Lama representative. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with a representative of the Dalai Lama in New Delhi on Wednesday, a move likely to infuriate Beijing, which considers the Tibetan spiritual leader a very dangerous separatist in quotes. Apocalyptic scenes on an unprecedented wildfire in Turkey threatening residential areas. This July 28th, wildfires broke out in 4 different locations in the Manavgat district of Turkey, southern Antalya province, threatening residential areas and prompting the evacuation of several people. There are pesticides that should have never been banned. There are pesticides that should have been banned decades ago. Some pesticides should have been banned decades ago, says environmentalist Carlos de Prada, who has warned of the danger to human health, even minimal, throughout fruits and vegetables. Drill a well and find the world's largest star sapphire weighing half a ton and may be worth of $1 billion. Sri Lankan authorities confirmed Tuesday the discovery of the largest sapphire ever seen. It is a find that occurred 8 months ago, but has been kept secret since then. The stone, which accumulates a large number of star sapphire grains, weighs more than 500 kilograms and measures 100 centimeters long. The find is due to chance, the drilling of a well on a private estate in the Ratnapura district in the south of the island nation. According to Sri Lankan law, this precious stone belongs to the landowner. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.